very upset about that. Patrick.
Well, this is what happens when you're a member of the tribe that says, let's let everybody in.
I am that member.
Okay, Steve, we're good.
You got an extra bedroom now.
I do. I have lots
Okay, everybody, we're going to stand for the pledge, please.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everybody, welcome. Kathy, if you could do a roll call, please.
You got it. Sheehan.
Present.
Hugh.
Present.
McDonald.
Present.
Logley.
Here.
Bergbauer.
Here.
Deskin.
Here.
Saban. Oh, and Bartleson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, everybody, well, welcome. Anybody have any liaison reports to talk about tonight?
I just have a short reminder that fall and Halloween is now in effect for the beautification recognition, and it goes until November 8th, and then we'll be sending out the letters to join us here at the meeting, so that way we can recognize people individually. So get your decorations up and send in those pictures.
Very good, thank you. And I forgot, please, Pastor Lou's here to open us in prayer. Sorry about that. But thank you, Joanne.
Almighty God, we take time to give you thanks for all the blessings in our lives and the blessings in our city. We look to you to refresh our hope, faith, and love. We ask you to bless each household in our area with health, provision, and peace. We look to you for the businesses of the city of Lockport to prosper. We give you thanks for the employees of Lockport that we sometimes don't see, the people who work in city utilities and streets and administration and organizing activities. We ask you to keep them and their families safe. We look to your hand of protection to be upon our schools, to keep them and our city secure from any acts of violence. For the first responders that protect and serve us, protect them and their families. Keep them safe from any harm. I give you thanks for our mayor, our city council, and city staff. We ask you to bless them with unity, wisdom, creativity, and leadership that will be a blessing to our city now and in the future. Help us to recognize and give you credit for all you've done and are doing. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got two things. Okay, first thing here is as you all know, I'm on the cemetery board. And we've had to go through some licensing issues, and it's been an absolute nightmare working with the state of Illinois and the licensing people. And I can go ahead and happily say that today we finally got our license. We get to start selling graves. And I want to thank Senator Ventura, Rachel Ventura, and specifically her Chief of Staff, John Leish. I reached out to all of our Springfield elected officials, and Rachel was the only one that ever responded to me. And John, her Chief of Staff, we worked hand in hand for about 6 weeks now and got it finally resolved. So that's good. Number two is I was remiss 2 weeks ago. We had an anniversary, a 10-year anniversary. Ben's been with us for 10 years.
Oh, man, it's been 10 years.
Yeah, it's been 10 years, okay? I can remember the first time I met him. He was sitting in the mayor's office, and he says, I want to introduce you to Ben Benson. And it was an interesting name because just a number of months earlier, in a conversation with Larry Walsh, he says, I understand you guys are looking for a city administrator. The guy you need to hire is Ben Benson. And so when I see Ben Benson sitting in there, he had brown hair and I had brown hair and a brown goatee. I still had the same amount of hair though.
They're often being
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you, Darren, I guess.
And so,
Wow.
and so that began a 10-year friendship with Ben, and our first thing that we ever really worked on was became what when he and I don't know each other, we sit next to him at the IML conference, and they were talking about a strategic plan, and I said to him, I don't even know what that is, but I think we need to do it. And brought that to the council, and that's what has evolved into our capital improvement plan. And we are now talking about our third capital improvement plan. And it's been that plan which literally distinguishes the city of Lockport from anybody else, not only just in the Will County area, but in the Midwest. Nobody else is doing what we're doing. And Ben's been the guy that's tried to keep the ship upright and in check, and he's had to deal with some strong personalities, and for the most part, he's kept us in check. So, Ben, another 10 years.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, the mayor. I can still remember my first interview in his kitchen. It was a lot of fun. And thank you to the council. I mean, really, the longevity for staff is kind of a funny thing. And the more you can keep people that are interested in your community, and whether it's elected or professional staff, and I couldn't be more proud to serve, and very proud of the people that we have working on staff. And it's a real prideful thing that I was involved in selecting every single one of them, so it's been a great ride, and I always feel like I'm a servant leader, so whatever I can do to help.
Right on. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Anybody else have something?
I've got a couple items. The Lockport Police Department will be taking part in the Rotary Club of Lockport 5th Annual Coffin Race, which takes place on Saturday, October 14th from 1 to 4. The event starts with a short parade from City Hall to the 900 block of South Hamilton Street where the race takes place. Second item was that Lockport Police will also be taking part in this year's Trunk or Treat, which is being held at the Lockport Township office at 1463 South Farrell Road. I think that might be missing a number. It's Farrell Road just south of Division on the west side. That event takes place on Thursday, October 26th from 5:30 to 7:30. This weekend is also St. Joseph Parish and Saints Dennis and Joseph Catholic Academy Oktoberfest. It's their 25th anniversary. And there's a carnival, there's a beer garden, there's children's activities, a craft fair, as well as live music. Maggie Speaks will be on Friday night. Radio Gaga on Saturday night. I think they played the Canal Days.
So it's this Saturday, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then we've got a kid coming from Nashville that grew up in Lockport that'll be playing Saturday afternoon, and polka music on Sunday. More information's online. And then finally, Sonny and I both sit on the Lockport Township High School Foundation's board, and they raise money for programs that the school does that they might not have the money to pay for, that's not in their budget, as well as for scholarships for the kids. And I wanted to thank the city for their support of the Taste of Lockport over the weekend. Angela, the executive director, made a special point at our meeting yesterday, or on Tuesday, I guess, yesterday, to just call out the city for just how supportive they are of the event. And so it's really, really appreciated on behalf of the foundation.
Well, thanks for sticking it out. It's hard to spin up a festival from nothing, and getting through that first year is always difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm very thrilled that you guys stuck it out, and you can see how much better it was. It was great,
Yeah,
right?
it's-
so much different than the first year. It's hard.
It
So
was
thank
great.
you.
It was great. I was sad I couldn't stick around. I had to head out to a volleyball game.
It was all good.
But thanks again.
All right. Anybody else got something? So I had a couple things before we get to Christina's native planting thing. So the speaking of Lockport Township Foundation, so today we started an internship program, started today. So the state of Illinois came up with a Pathways Endorsement Certification Program for students that helps them build some credentials for going to college. And so the foundation started the Lockport Township Internship Program. Kind of started when me and Wendy, we were talking about bringing young people in and partnering up with folks on staff, anything from police to public works to, political stuff with mayor, and really giving young people an understanding of, these are viable careers. These are good careers. They're fun, just there's nothing more hands-on than city government and city staff. Nothing affects your life more than the people up here. Right? We can get I'm always amazed at how fired up people get about a presidential election, like it's the Bears versus the Packers. And it's like, what really matters is what mostly goes on in these chambers for your life. So anyways, the kids came in and they partnered up with everybody, and it was really good. I thank you staff for taking that time, like an hour and 15 minutes every other Wednesday, or once a month, I think, right? Something like that, twice. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I really think it's investing in our kids and helps them as well. So, and then the other thing I just want to mention, Cynthia Georgianis called me, her nephew, Hosea Posey, he's 17. He got a book published. It's called Theatrical Tragedy, and it's very exciting as a young man to get a book published. And he's doing book signing November 4th at Coombs Corner. I looked at the book. It's pretty cool. It's kind of like a little Doctor Strange-esque, and so it's very exciting. So I told her I'd mention Hosea Posey tonight. So.
And what is the date? I'm sorry.
The name of the book is Theatrical Tragedy.
And the date?
And it's Coombs Corner, November 4th is the book signing.
Thank you.
All right. So if there's nothing else, then Christina, I will let you introduce this.
I guess I should,
Go down there.
yeah, I think that's the best way to do it.
Podium is good.
I brought a guest. It's Tara Neff, and she would like to speak to you regarding native plantings, and then from there, I will also speak. Go ahead.
Clicker? Do I use this or this? This one? Oh. Well, good evening, City Council. Thank you for having me. It's a great night, and I'm here to talk about native plant gardens or native plants on the landscape. I'm Tara Neff. I'm with the Conservation Foundation. I'm the Will County Program Director. We have a really lengthy mission statement, so I'll just read our tagline. We save land, we save rivers, and we grow healthy. We're a private nonprofit. We've been around for over 50 years, and we are an accredited land trust serving northeastern Illinois. We're headquartered at McDonald Farm on the south end of Naperville. It's 60 acres that was donated to us by Lenore McDonald, and we run an organic vegetable farm there. We do a number of programs both at the farm and throughout the communities that we serve to improve the health of our watersheds and our landscapes. Really, it's all about good quality of life. So today I'm here to discuss the benefits of native plants, and one of the big ones that I always like to talk about is reducing the amount of turf grass maintenance that people are responsible for. We're also using native plants to create functional landscapes. They help infiltrate our stormwater and increase our good soil health. They can create beautiful gardens that increase biodiversity that you welcome into your community. And also, they can create seasonal outdoor learning opportunities for everyone, not just kids. So when I talk about functional landscapes, you can see on the left our traditional turf grass that's typically installed in lots of public spaces. It requires a lot of funding. You have to water it to get it established, you have to mow it probably weekly, you might be using fertilizers or herbicides to keep it looking nice and lush and green, and all for what purpose? So that you have green grass that you have to maintain. So the problem with this is that it's not really serving any function. It's not doing anything. It's not feeding anyone, it's not providing shelter for anyone, it's just kind of there. Actually, now that somebody told me I have more than 5 minutes, I'm gonna go off script here and let you know that turf grass is probably the largest crop in the state of Illinois. That's sad. On the flip side, if you look at the right side of the screen, you'll see that this is what we would call a functional landscape. Not only is it, to me, more aesthetically pleasing, but it's also serving a function. It's providing food and shelter for those native species that have evolved with us and that would be indicators of a good, healthy environment. Also, as a bonus, it helps catch and keep rainwater where it falls, thereby reducing the amount of polluted stormwater runoff that might be leaving a site. So what you see is not always what you get, and this is the reason why. If you notice in the middle, the turf grass, which is what lots and lots of public spaces have, their root system is so teeny tiny that when rainwater hits it, it just washes right off. If you look on the other side, or at the native plant species, you'll notice that their very, very, very deep root systems can go up to 16 feet into the ground, which helps infiltrate that rainwater, and it also helps clean that water as it percolates down. More and more people have been implementing these kinds of gardens in their public spaces, not only because they're beautiful, they can be considered a community amenity, but it also kind of demonstrates a community's commitment to more sustainable landscape choices. So we've worked with a number of people throughout the region for over 20 years to help increase the native plants that we put in the ground. And this is the reason why, because all of these native species rely on vegetation, but not just during the summer months or the fall or the spring when things are pretty, but also during the winter. So that's why we recommend you leave your native plants up over winter and clean them up in the spring, because they are providing food and shelter throughout the year. Some of these you'll see, but this is again the outdoor learning lab I was talking about. Oopsie. You know, you can take a little teeny tiny egg, you can watch the caterpillar munch on the monarch milkweed, you can look at the beautiful green chrysalis, and then in a classroom setting even, children have the opportunity to watch these monarchs transform themselves. It's fun, lots of people love to do it. You can do it with moths, they're beautiful. And the great thing about this is that you don't have to do it alone. The Conservation Foundation is committed to helping support initiatives that get more native plants, trees, and shrubs into the ground. We've been recognizing landowners, both corporate, private, big, small, to incorporate these native plants. We have what's called Conservation at Home and Conservation at Work. That's recognizing landowners that are making more sustainable landscape choices, and this would include homeowners associations. We can provide community presentations, we can do demonstrations, we can work with connecting you with other professionals, whether you would like to see different public sites that have been converted into natural areas, or if purposefully or not purposefully included bioswales for stormwater management, or rain gardens in homeowners' yards to deal with water management issues. So that's all I had prepared. I hope you guys will keep in touch or reach out if you have any questions, but I'm happy to take any if you have some now.
Yeah, Tara, thanks. I appreciate you bringing this to us. I know we've been working on options, you know, for the community and trying to explore different things, and Christina's been leading that for us, so I'm very thankful. I do have one question for you. So if, you know, people bring in native plantings into their yard, the deep roots, how do they affect underground utilities? Like if people got water lines, or if there's, you know, cable, whatever, like, do you find that it causes a lot of damage, or what are your experiences?
They don't. And the root systems, while they're very deep, they can get up to the 16 feet. It's not like a tree root that's like, you know, I don't know what the diameter of this is. They're not like, you know, 6 inches in diameter that you're going to be causing problems with pipes or any kind of underground utilities.
Okay, so don't crack, burst it, tie around, okay.
No.
Okay.
So I'm kind of familiar with this, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Up in our lake area, we got into this a couple years ago, and it's amazing how it's changed the quality of our water, because putting it along the lakefront has stopped a lot of the pesticides that people put on their grass from going into the water. So it really has changed the lake.
Yeah. Definitely has beneficial impacts to water quality, especially around shorelines that could also help stabilize.
I saw something on one slide about stream stabilization. Is there like grants available and things like that for stream?
I can definitely do some research to connect you to see if there are any potential grants, but, you know, lots of homeowners associations have been making this move because they've seen the detrimental effects to having erosion happen and their detention basins or retention basins filling up with sediment. And as part of the stormwater infrastructure, it's kind of important that somebody's maintaining it. And native plants can help in a lot of ways, so.
I have a question. Do you have the ability or the availability for a seed bank or something? Here's why I ask. We have, I mentioned this before, we have about 200 acres of a former refinery site that may or may not be developed tomorrow or in the next 100 years. And so I've said, well, why don't we just turn some of this land into prairie? Okay, so we could wait for the birds to seed it, or we can get other things. Now, what I've also noticed here is we have an undeveloped subdivision off of Bruce Road and Briggs Street, whatever that's called out there. And I've noticed this year for the first time, I take my dog running out there every day, and I've noticed that the fall native flowers have been far more extensive this year than any year that I can remember, of all different shades, mostly goldenrod, but there's the blue ones and orange ones, and I even took some cuttings of a wild rose bush that luckily rooted, and I'll transplant next year around my house. And so that was just natural nature taking over, and where these seeds come from, who knows? So, is it something that, if we could think about turning 20, 30, 50 acres, whatever, into a native type of, not even native plantings, but just native grass, just throw some seeds out there and flowers and stuff, then we don't have to cut it.
Yeah, I think that, we talked a little bit about when the Shell folks came out and they were wanting to do native plantings. Here's my only concern about it. I love it. My only concern about it is we do that out there, and then something comes up where we have an opportunity to develop it, and now suddenly the, endangered hoochie coochie is out there.
Yeah, I
And
understand.
they don't let us take it down.
I
right? You can't plow that up, Mayor. It's got the
Well,
endangered hoochie
I
coochie.
understand, I just look at whatever type of plantings would be, and I'm not even talking plants, I'm just talking tossing seeds. Knowing full well that sometime in the future it may be cleared off, but for the meantime, we have a green space that, it's just something to think about.
Yeah,
So
I'm a
if-
full fan of this stuff, so.
So if there is a possibility to get 1,000 pounds or 2,000 pounds of native seeds of all sorts to broadcast out in an area at little to no cost.
Well, I mean, I will just caution you in the sense that once you have native prairie established, and there are all different kinds of seed mixes, depending on what the site calls for or what end result you're looking for. There are low profile, and then there are the really, really tall prairie plants. I mean, I made the mistake of buying prairie plants from the Forest Preserve District, and they're literally taller than my teeny tiny house. So they're now falling over, but depending on what space you're looking to fill. But there is some management if you're concerned about having a quality area or getting the native plants established so that they outcompete weeds. That's another cost. And I would recommend, I mean, you could absolutely buy seed from any number of native prairie plant stores, I guess I would call them growers, that you could broadcast yourself and see what comes up. I mean, it's definitely something you could do, but I would say if you would like it to be something that's of a higher quality, you might you might invest in some kind of maintenance or operation so that it becomes established?
Well, this is where somebody like you would come in to say, this is how I would do it.
Absolutely.
When we originally purchased the Chevron parcel, that was one of the things that we did. So we do have a quote to turn the entire project into a native landscape with a low-profile seed mix, as well as maintenance requirements that would establish it. You know, we require in our landscape specs that any development come in with a minimum of a 3-year maintenance plan that would be a part of their project. So, for instance, with Sagebrook, we got regular reports on the quality of that. At Lockport Square, we get regular reports on the quality of the bioswales that were put out there as a part of the Army Corps' requirements. So we do have that factored into a lot of our things, and we did get a quote to go ahead and turn the entire thing into prairie. There are some requirements related to the ELUCs and turning that into native landscape. Whether or not that's a legacy that could be somehow cut away is something that would require IEPA discussion.
Well, I can go ahead and donate one of my black-eyed Susans. And in 2 years, the entire 200 acres will be taken over. Well, they're
Yeah,
something else.
the ELUC doesn't prevent just the growth of plants. It prohibits farming, but we can grow plants. So.
Wouldn't it also prevent people using it as like a recreational area to like go enjoy the plants?
Yeah, as long as we don't condone it, yeah.
Just saying.
Jonathan's gonna climb the fence and just walk
Go
through
look at
it.
Black-Eyed Susans. I had a couple of items. First one, we're looking at the same piece of property, the far west side, for a solar farm. I know that many times they'll put native vegetation underneath it for pollinators and because you need ground cover
Yeah.
to prevent erosion and stuff like that.
That is
So-
one of the parts of their proposal, is to
Yeah.
turn the smaller, what would have been Project 2, I think, that will have native landscape underneath it. The far west side is all gravel, so that would be a large project.
And then the other item is more practical. We have an ordinance in town that requires lawns to be kept, is it under 6 inches? Are there species that don't grow higher than 6 inches so that it could become part of kind of a residential ordinance, like you
I think the
cut your
6,
lawn
yeah,
unless you're growing native?
yeah, 6 inches is for grass or weed. You know, as long as the planting is not categorized as noxious or, you know, a weed invasive type of plants, you can grow gardens that are taller than 6 inches.
All the way up to the sidewalk? I'm thinking,
Yeah, it's,
I'm
yeah.
thinking you might want to
Yeah.
delineate or adjust or to encourage, I think some development plans encourage, like the Will County Stormwater Ordinance encourages native plantings, but to allow or at least not prohibit the use of native plants. And what some communities have done is to delineate gardens from lawns. So that's why, you know, I don't want to toot my own horn, partnering with the Conservation Foundation to help provide community support for what you're trying to do here and do some resident engagement and education about the difference between weeds and native plants and the purposes that they're serving would be helpful.
Yeah, in fact, I'm sure Christina's gonna talk to that in a second, because that was one of the questions, or it was one of the concerns, is how do you make this work? Because as soon as one guy puts in native plantings, the big lawn bill is gonna be like, what the hell is this next to my house, right? So they're gonna go bananas. So is there a way to do this where it's, you know, not full lawn? Is there part, I'll let Christina talk to it. I don't wanna take her thunder away, but yeah, it's a perfect question you're leading up to with what's the rub.
Mr. Segway.
Yes.
Mr. Segway for the rest of the night.
Why, thank you for that. And thank you, Kara, and Christian, and Tina, and Joanne. They're all part of Bloom Lockport, and we have a few of other members that are involved. This was a great opportunity for us to get this started. I feel, as a personal note, I feel like there's so much going on as far as the environment, and I feel like even though we do our things at our house level, I feel like it's not enough. And this project, I feel like it involves the community. It does more than just what we can do in our own households. This goes out and it helps the environment. The natives, they're hardy, they grow deep, and they require very little water, which water is becoming less and less now. And there's very little maintenance. Our mission for Bloom Lockport is pretty easy. It's to encourage and educate our community to grow native and sustainable ecosystems. Our vision is similar, to beautify our community through native and sustainable ecosystems. And how we're going to accomplish these goals is through involvement and investment. We want to do it by showing, telling, and doing. So showing is we're going to have this garden on the grounds. There we go. There it is right there. So it's going to be on Washington and 9th at that one corner. And right there, that will show the ADH pathway that'll start at 9th and Washington and go all the way down. The garden is 30 by 50, and that interesting little thing, that's the little kind of polka dot trail. We're a little undecided on what that should be. We're kind of thinking a no-mow grass, which is basically kind of like a long grass that has its own like kind of hippie-like kind of look. But the problem with that may be that people might say, well, why aren't you mowing your grass? Because it looks just like grass, but it's going to be a lot longer. But visually, it'll almost look like water coming down. And then it'll be we have a combination of natives and hybrids. And the reason why we're doing that is because when you first put a garden like this in, a native garden, it takes about 3 years to take off. And maybe that's why, Darren, I'm just guessing, is maybe it took a while for them to really present themselves. It's not an immediate thing. So we're combining hybrids with that. But in the garden, we're going to go ahead and definitely have signage that says what is native and how you can get them. So that's how we're showing, at least our first one anyways. Then telling is we're having an educational component. We're explaining why native gardens are important to the community, as Tara has done. And we're also going to go out to civic organizations, HOAs, and school boards explaining the need and use of native plantings. And clubs such as women's clubs, Lions clubs, Moose, etc., explaining why this is important. And the doing part is kind of a fun part, is we're getting the high school involved, we're getting the horticultural department involved. What they're going to do is certain plants that we select that meet certain requirements, maybe like all sun, certain height for certain areas, they'll actually supply the kits. So during their sale that they have yearly in the spring, they'll supply a native plant kit that you can buy. You can buy a big lot or a small lot, and they'll sell that to the individual resident. That's one thing. And then also, the high school has over 50 student organizations. So I'm sure some of those organizations, like Interact, would be interested in helping out in these gardens. So they can participate as well. We'd also like to have information booths set up during events like the car shows or canal days regarding all things gardening through the Illinois Extension Program. Here's the part, is how do we pay for this? We'd like to ask the board to accept the proposed budget to start the first garden. After that, we're very sure, I can't say 100%, we're very sure that we can get other funding through grants, also through other organizations, civic organizations, hopefully, will buy into the program and maybe donate seed, maybe donate labor, with the fact that they can perhaps put some signage up, like this garden is donated by XYZ Club. Also, one thing that I think would be a good thing is to create an ordinance for maybe a 7-cent bag tax. So all the money from the proceeds of the bags, like, you know, bags that you get at Jewel or Walmart or whatever, are taxed 7 cents. Those would be sent back to us, and we can help sustain the gardens, because we are planning on, past this garden, there's certain areas like the hellscapes. There's also 8th and Madison, I believe there's a big area there. Also, the chief doesn't know about this, but we were kind of thinking about putting a vegetable garden by the police station, which I think, because you guys have water, and I know it'll be very secure. So, yeah, so I think it might be a really good idea there. Plus, it'll reach, you know, people that maybe live in apartments and can't have gardens. So, and I guess that's about it. Anybody got any questions?
Well, I want to make some comments. First off, well done, Christina. Thank you for driving this. I know I first brought this to you a while back, and you've done a great job. And thank you, Tina, and everybody for being part of, you know, the committee and working together towards this stuff. I mean, ultimately, you know, creating a garden like this over here on City Hall's property is, like you said, it's about showing residents, this is what these look like, right? And can you do this on your own property? And I think that what we need to discuss is, what does that mean? Because I don't think it's going to be palatable in the beginning to just tell somebody you can cover your whole yard like this, because I think it's just going to cause problems with neighbors who aren't yet embracing it. I mean, this aesthetic of the big lawn has been so ingrained in our minds, it's hard to just break free, and just that there's a way to do it, I think, with love, right? We can approach this over time and let people see it. And then I'm thinking maybe one of the ways to do it is, if you create one of these spaces, maybe there's a percentage we come up with, and just talking out loud here, so don't take it for gospel, but like, if, you know, 40% of your yard can be this, and it has to have an edging so it looks neat, like a garden almost. I mean, maybe those are ways to start integrating it into the community's mindset. So over time, people just embrace this. It really does make a difference with water, that's for sure. I remember we walked through that forest preserve loop down, I forget what they call it. It's just south of us. But Hadley. All the grass was brown, and all the native stuff was still green. You know, it just makes a difference on your water bill. A couple years ago, I thought I'd keep my grass green. That cost me $600. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done, right? So, yeah, and for what, you know? So I really think this is a great idea. We just have to figure out a way to ease it, I think, in for the community to embrace.
To your point, there's a homeowner on Reed, and I think it's 9th or 10th in between there. He's got the corner house on a lot, and he's got a lot of, you know, that garden type there. It's bordered, so he does have lawn and those.
Yeah.
It actually looks pretty nice. So.
Yeah.
Reed and Maple, yeah, Maple Court, yeah.
What is the answer to people who believe or might think that the native plantings will bring in the unwanted animals, not your butterflies or anything, but your, you know, raccoons, your rodents or whatever? Sure. What is the answer to that?
Well, I'm not
Well, yeah,
100% sure,
the right
but
person,
I think,
Those aren't what would attract those nuisance
There we go.
Species. They're providing food and habitat only for those that were co-evolved. I mean, maybe a different bird, but if you put in bee balm in your yard, it's not going to attract raccoons. Is that what you're talking
'Cause
about?
I'm more like raccoon, like whatever animals that we really don't want hanging out. If somebody looks at tall grass, they're saying, oh, I bet there's a critter living in there that we don't want.
Yeah, like
I
a
mean,
fox.
so-
Well, I will say another way that you could, I mean, we're certainly not purists by any stretch of the imagination. We understand that getting community acceptance can be a challenge, but it's good that you're thinking about that now at the onset. Just taking spaces like you're proposing here from traditional turf grass and incorporating native plants, using some of the perennials or whatever you're putting in there.
Hybrids.
I'm not really sure. To make it acceptable and look pretty from the get-go is something that's really smart as well. But it could be that you're encouraging people, hey, when your tree dies in your yard, why don't you plant an oak species? Or hey, if you're looking for a shrub to edge your lawn so you don't have to see your neighbor's beautiful prairie, no, I'm just kidding. You could use buttonbush, so it's just incorporating the native plants onto your landscape, using them potentially to deal with any water issues you might be experiencing, or showing or getting a sign that's recognizing that you're kind of doing your part. Like Christina said, everybody can do something, everybody can do a little bit better. So we're not asking people to install a prairie in their front yard. And I know that some people do, and it has caused issues like you're concerned about, but I would say the majority of people, because they are kind of expensive to get them in and get them going and get them looking good, may not go gung-ho like that.
One thing I've noticed also is out at that subdivision, the yellow plants, those are goldenrods. And as I'd walked through there, and I probably saw 5 different species of bumblebee out there. There was one specific species of wasp that was always out on these plants. But now the goldenrod is kind of done, and there's now this new purple plant, and the purple plant is just full of honeybees. Okay, I didn't see the honeybees on the goldenrod, but I'm seeing honeybees, and there's, I can't believe so I like the flowers. The grass is great, but I like the native flowers. All right, I'm done.
Well, if, does anybody else have any comments?
I was just going to say, I think this just gives an opportunity for residents to, instead of putting just your normal bushes or just your standard landscaping, this just gives them another option that they could be, doing good for the environment as well as beautifying their section that they usually just use a section of their home property anyhow to put their bushes and flowers and things, and this just gives them another option. And I think it could be so colorful and so pretty once it really takes effect.
All right, so why don't we do this? Christina, just the cost of this, I know you had a number for it, just put it in with the budget meetings, and when we sit down with all the council members, the staff will bring it up and say, hey, look, this showcase at City Hall is going to cost X, well, can we put it into the budget? So I definitely start there. And I know you guys have done a tremendous amount of work, but if you can next think about what would your recommendations be for implementing it in a yard? Like, does it need to be edged? Should it be so much percentage? Should it be, I would like you, if you guys don't mind, if you could come to us with a recommendation for that.
Okay, all right.
Christine, was the location for this picked because it's in a low area and it will be receiving like surface water and?
The location was picked for a couple reasons. One of the reasons was there wasn't that much shade, because if we moved it to one way or another, we'd get the trees. And then also, we're actually away, there's a
little berm there.
Yeah, there's a big berm, and we're away from that. And also, we wanted it to be visible, be very visible. And that's why that dotted area, we're kind of trying to figure out what we should put there, because we want people to see it from the road, And also, we're making the pathway ADA, so this way it's accessible to anyone who wants to walk down there. And we are making it an educational piece, and hopefully can tie in. We're thinking of maybe taking the information and changing it out, kind of like the storyboard is, that's storyboard idea where they have the different books. So within the different seasons, we'll change those out, maybe get some of the kids to author some of the pages about the plants and what they see throughout the season. So I think it's a real community effort, and I just think it's gonna be a fantastic thing, and I'm very happy to be doing this.
Okay.
Christine, is the sidewalk part of the budget?
Pardon me?
Is the sidewalk that runs through it part of the budget?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, it is.
thanks.
Thank you.
Yep, bravo. Thank you. And I think what we'll do is I'll have Lance bring this up with H&A. Just, I'm going to, personally, I think I don't see it as an issue. This has been a public square since it was originally here. And I think that trumps anything else. It's like, it's always meant to be a public square, and I think for what this is trying to do, works fine with that. But if you feel it necessary, okay.
And I'll ask Brent to look at the pavement and sidewalk, ADA sidewalks, and depending on the budget number we put in so far, we may have to amend or use some of our sidewalk money, but we'll make sure we include it in our budget talks.
Okay. All right, thanks again. Well done, Christina. All right. What else we got? All right, so I guess, man, that was the longest liaison reports we've ever had. All right, so next we're looking for a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So move.
All right, we had Joanne and Pat, I think, no seconded. All in favor? Aye. All right, so we're looking for approval for our regular city council meeting minutes from September 20th, committee of the whole meeting minutes from September 20th, special committee of the whole workshop meeting minutes from September 27th, our payroll period ending September 17th, ordinance 23029, amending City of Lockport to allow dispensing of alcohol at City Hall, release of the bond and initial acceptance of site improvements for Prologis Building 7, the acceptance of Heritage Crossing Building 7 trailer park expansion, authorization, the Surface Transportation Program, local funding for Illinois Route 7 channelization, and then the appropriation of the motor fuel tax for rebuilding and maintenance of streets and highways, Resolution 23088. So, looking for a motion to approve? Renee? Seconded by Jonathan. And may we do a roll call, please?
You got it. Sheehan?
Yes.
Hugh?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Balogly?
Yes.
Bergbauer?
Yes.
Deskin?
Yes.
Bartleson?
Yes.
Saban? Yeah. Motion passes.
All right, looking for a motion to approve bills through September 26th. It was Joanne and Pat?
Which Pat?
Oh, McDonald.
McDonald.
Big D. All right, we're looking, can I have a roll call, please?
You got it. Sheehan?
Yes.
Hugh?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Balogly?
I abstain. The City of Lockport is paying my employer for some valve box keys.
Deskin?
Yes.
Sorry, Bergbauer?
Yes.
Bartleson?
Yes.
Saban? Yes. Motion passes.
Okay, and then we're looking for a motion to approve ordinance 23030, which is the overlay district for the Star Innovation District. I think Lance gave a really good, thorough presentation, but I just wanted to put it on action in case anybody had a chance to read through it and had any questions. So was there any other questions or thoughts to it?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
I'm
All
sorry.
right.
Galogly?
JR, approved and seconded by the
Pat.
McD.
McD.
D.
McD. P. McD.
Right, McD. All right.
So if there's no questions, then we'll do a roll call.
Okay. Sheehan?
Yes.
Hugh?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Galogly?
Yes.
Bergbauer?
Yes.
Deskin?
Yes.
Bartleson?
Yes.
And Saban? Yes. Motion passes.
All right. Anything for new business? Then we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
All right, JR. Second. Seconded by Jonathan. All in favor?
Aye.
And whenever you're ready, Kathy, just tell us
You
for
got it.
next meeting.
Okay, ready when you are.
Okay, looking for a roll call then for committee of the whole.
You got it. All right, Sheehan.
Here.
You.
Present.
McDonald.
Yes.
Sologli.
Here.
Birdbauer.
Here.
Deskin.
Here.
Bartleson.
Here?
Saban. We have a quorum.
All right, first thing on the agenda. Sunny, this looks like you.
Yes, Mayor, members of the City Council, item AT1 deals with the procedure to sell or lease surplus public real estate and authorize the city administrator to execute that procedure. So the city of Lockport, currently we have 3 properties that we owned. The 712 West 8th Street was obtained through a tax deed through a Wood County trustee auction sale. The city purchased it for $800, and the structure that was on that property was demolished because it was in an unsafe and dangerous condition, and that was is an empty lot right now. The second property is located at 1213 South State Street and is also an empty lot. It is on the corner, it's right off of South State Street. Right south of that is 1327 South State Street, in which the current Route 66 sign is located. That property had a vacant, abandoned structure on that property. We were able to obtain a judicial deed through the court process and obtain the deed free and clear of any encumbrances, and it's been vacant since the city has owned it for, I think, since 2018, and the structure was demolished in 2018. The city incurred the expense of demolishing it, about $10,250. And these 3 parcels are not together. They're in the TIF area, but it's not big enough for a developer to come in and develop any, multi-use apartment complex. And it's not the city's purpose to own these properties or build homes on it. So as a home rule community, we're authorized to set a process in which the properties can be sold to someone, a contractor who's in the business of, building a single-family home, because those lots are, big enough for a single-family home, but nothing else. And what is being proposed under ordinance number 20-031 would be, number 1, establish that those properties are a surplus property that the city no longer needs, and 2, authorize the city administrator to take in requests for qualification proposals to find the best contractor or builder to develop and build single-family homes on those properties. So with that in mind, I would be more than happy to answer any questions.
I understand the 2, but what are you gonna do with the Route 66 sign?
I don't think it would be our intent to sell that one.
remove it right now.
And again, the intent of this particular ordinance isn't to establish that we are selling these 3 parcels. It's to give Ben the opportunity to be able to negotiate that without having to bring each single one back to you all for evaluation. And so we've crafted a RFQ that we can send out to a couple builders. We're hoping primarily local that could build a home on these properties. I personally don't have any intent to sell the Route 66 location at this time. Honestly, the lot is fairly small, not very deep, and it's difficult access, so I'm not sure how easy it would be to build something that makes any more sense than what's already there north of it. But certainly the house on 8th Street on the west side and the one that is a little bit further north of 13th Street on State, both of those are certainly viable properties. And right now we mow them, so there is some level of cost that the city incurs for those properties on an annual, weekly, monthly basis.
All right, I understand.
Yep. Yeah,
Personally,
there's-
I was hoping that Christina would do one of those native plantings at the Route 66 thing. Seriously, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, there's no time limitation or anything that immediate that we, the city's going to convey those properties to anyone.
Okay, all right. Well, I would say I'm fine with it, just, but 1327 is, you'd have to come back and tell us what your thought, if there was ever a desire by the council or the staff to sell it, just make sure you bring that past past the council.
My hope is to identify a short list of 2 or 3 builders that as we get more properties, we can bid those out. And, you know, however we ultimately select a winner for that, whether it's highest bid or something along those lines, that allows us to engage them. You know, if Jack Pine Way goes the direction that I think it ultimately will, we'll have enough liens written on that property that we would be able to foreclose on it. Now, that's a 2-year process to get through that route. So it's not happening tomorrow, but this at least gives us an opportunity to relatively quickly get the properties back on the tax rolls in a way that's positive, not only for the neighbors that are around it, but also for our maintenance, lowering our maintenance. I know that Joe Cronin would love not to have to mow some of these small properties and haul their mowers all over the city to mow these things. So that's the intent, is that we can have a small pool of contractors. Ben has the authority to negotiate on the city council's behalf for these smaller properties.
The only thing I'd like to see in it is that a requirement is you have to notify city council. It could be an FYI on a committee of the whole. It says, hey, FYI, city administrator is looking at using his authorities through this to sell this. That way, if there's ever a piece of property that is, you know, maybe there's a bigger vision for it, it gives the council an opportunity not to find out, you sold that corner, we were going to use that for this. So that would be my ask, to put that into there.
Yeah, so the city council still has to declare those property as surplus. So if we do obtain, you know, some type of title or ownership of other future properties, the city council will still have to deem it as surplus and authorize the city administrator to negotiate. So as part of the ordinance is that there's no requirement that we have to take the lowest bidder. This is based on the qualification and experience of that builder. So we're not going to be bidding this or posting it out for closed bid to have the most unqualified builder in town, you know, build something that's not in par.
I do have a question for that. So will an appraisal be done on each of these properties?
So there's no requirement to do appraisal. This is, as a home rule authority, you know, you can request, or you can, if you want to change the ordinance and request that appraisal be done, but appraisal is not needed.
How are you going to determine what the value is of that property when you go to sell it?
Yeah, it's not necessarily sell. It could be through negotiating purchase sales agreement. It could be through what the city has paid
Invested.
right now for the property to acquire it or to demolish the property. Those are things that can be considered to, you know, to be able to negotiate with the potential developer.
I mean, I look at the transaction as something that we're looking for the best investment in our community. So if there's a builder that wants to put a $500,000 townhouse on it instead of a $100,000 shed, I would go with the $500,000 investment in our community, most likely, right?
but
It isn't
would it
really
be a
about, we're
good
not
idea-
selling it to make money.
No, well, I get it, but I mean, I think we should know what the values of those properties are, so that if someone does approach the city about those, because it looks like the city themselves is going to be selling the properties? Is that how it's
We own
set
them
up?
today.
Yeah, we own these properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we already have that information. Those properties were worth X number of dollars before they were appraised for X number of dollars before they were taken off the tax rolls. Of these 3 properties, there's only one viable, and it's 1213 State, to build any type of residential property. The one on, by the train station, it's the size of a postage stamp, and the other one is really no bigger than an alley, so.
Yeah, there was a,
Yeah, that one there, it's,
Somebody was interested in it, but
yeah.
you know.
But there was a single-family house there that was
Yeah,
built there.
but it's not very big. The only value is any of the adjacent property owners, they'd want to go ahead and purchase that property to expand their property.
I mean, I'd be happy to get an appraisal. I mean, I don't know if I would use that standard to say, well, if you don't pay us what the appraised price is, that's not the only deciding factor, right? It depends on the reinvestment that somebody wants to do.
We
on
could
it.
evaluate it based on what the city has invested in it. So for that 8th Street property, we've invested $800 because we did pay for the demo, but we had it reimbursed by the county as a part of their CDBG funding. So that property cost us $800. I'm sure somebody would be willing to buy it. We have had people interested in putting a home on that property, so it's not something that it's unbuildable. And if there was a property that was like a sliver piece or something like that, we would probably engage the adjacent neighbors to see if they would be interested in buying something like that versus the property on State Street where we invested whatever it was, $10,000 in demoing the home. That could be set a floor for whatever the bidding would be. Ultimately, you know, we're kind of looking for your direction if you want an appraisal for each one before we would engage in that. If you want us to set a floor based on the amount invested by the city, we could certainly set a floor on that. If you're looking for whatever the highest bid from the pre-qualified builders is, we could certainly set a floor based on that. So there's a variety of different ways that we could do it, or if you're willing to simply put it into the deal in order to get a better structure or something that meets, you know, requirements. If we want a home that's, you know, costs less than $200,000, many of you have talked about affordability within the city. If you want to put a cap on the dollar value, the construction value of the house, because we own the property and we're selling it, that's something that you could do. It's not something that we could do across the community because that violates a number of laws, but because you own it, you could certainly set whatever parameters you wanted related to that.
I mean, but personally, I think I would treat it like we've done other parcels. Like when we bought Embers is a great example, right? We paid $300,000 for it, but we sold it for $10 because somebody was going to put $2.6 million into it. So sometimes it just doesn't matter what the value is, and spending money on a figure out what the value of it is. The value is, I think, in the eye of like, is it better served with the right developer? And if we sell it for the demo cost or even less, sometimes it's worth it. I mean, we've found that many times here in town. And there's part of our current ordinances, you can't sell it to a council person or a person on a committee, so Dave Oxley can't come in here and buy this, so we're not doing anybody any favors. It's just gonna be outside, you know, people outside of our sphere. So I don't have a problem with it, just leaving discretion to the administrator.
That property down there, that's residential R1, it can't be turned into a rental property, or could it be?
Any property can be rented.
So if a guy
we don't
developed it and he
restrict
turned it into a rental property, that'd be, okay?
Yeah.
According to the way our code is, yes, you can rent homes that you own.
That's
We don't have an
national
ordinance.
fair housing laws.
Yeah, that's just the way it is, the state. But that's why we put in our other, what do we call it? I forget what we call it.
I think one thing we're trying to do
The thing where we
is-
keep track of housing rentals.
Rental registration.
Rental registration. We
I
have
think-
that in place to make sure it's not, doesn't turn into a dump because somebody's renting it and they don't live in town and care.
One thing we're trying to do with this authorization is just to enable the negotiation process, that it's not something that's so public, like between the board and the buyer and multiple buyers and things like that. I'm happy to take your discretion and try to work up a deal on them individually, and we can do the RFQ as a pre-sale agreement until the council approves it if you want, or something like that. I mean, we'd have to change the wording on the RFQ a little bit, pending approval by council, but we'd be happy to bring the results of whatever we can best negotiate on each one of those. Really wasn't looking at more than the main two. Or in the future of any other project. I mean, we don't operate in a vacuum here anyway, so I'm happy to. I think it was more of a procedural thing to handle an RFQ process and get proposals for redevelopment. It's a little cleaner this way. But be happy to bring those results to the council for blessing before we close on the property.
Okay, So what are you looking for right now? Are you looking for us to approve the way it's written? the
Well,
way-
yes, this would be an action item because it requires a supermajority vote to vote on. I can put in the ordinance that the city council be notified of who ends up purchasing it through either a report back from, the city administrator or,
and that's fine. I'm less concerned about who buys it. I mean, I assume that it goes to what you guys think is best. I just want to make sure that the city council is notified. For instance, because 1327 is now going to be considered surplus property, and although there's no intention for it, 3 years, suddenly the city administrator is like, yeah, I think I'm going to sell this, whoever, and nobody knows about it, and then next thing we know, the Route 66 sign gets put. I just think everybody should know before it happens. That's it. Just it doesn't have to be approved. It could just be, if it comes up, and then we can, of course, stop it if we feel like.
You can pull that property off,
we could
out of the
remove that.
ordinance right now, and then it wouldn't be included.
And that's fine, because you can
If you
always
want.
add it on later if you want to
Yep.
add it. So I would just remove it then, if that's the case.
yeah,
Yeah, the 1327.
the last one. Yep. So when this comes up for action, that last property, the third one, will be removed at 1327 South State Street.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we'll put it on for action, and if anybody else has got anything they want to run by, then we've got 2 weeks to.
Yeah, and there's a lot of properties in the city that we own that are surplus that we could bring future opportunities on. We just thought this would be 2 good pilots.
Yeah.
And let's see how it works.
All right, sounds good. All right, next is a facade grant. What do you got, Lance?
Thanks. CD1 is related to the Lockport Moose Lodge. They are requesting funds through the Facade and Site Improvement Grant Program to replace the former marble panels that resided over the main doors and extended west towards the west edge of the building. Property is located in the historic district boundary of the C4 Commercial District and is within the target area for the facade grant. Your staff memo noted that the case was heard at a special meeting in the H&A Commission last night on October 3rd. Given the time of the year and the challenges associated with installing masonry during the winter, we wanted to try and give them the opportunity to review it and present it in front of you the next night, because this is a full 2-week process before they are granted the facade funds. We wanted to make sure that they could start sooner rather than later. During that meeting last night, the material that was proposed for the facade was not approved, and the commission directed staff to work with the Moose to identify another product that would be more consistent with what the original architecture had identified, the black, more marble appearance as to what they had. Commission totally understands the financial aspects of it, and so they've asked us to look at some alternative different materials for it. The Moose is totally okay with that. They are actually actively sending me links today for some other products that I think will be more consistent with the historic look. My hope tonight is that you would consider allowing this to go to action for the next meeting, so that once we get bids, hopefully over the next 2 weeks, that I would be able to change the memo in the ordinance to reflect what that amount is. It will likely be higher because they got a deal on the brick, because somebody knows somebody who had some extra brick in the yard, and they were able to get all of that pieced together. So my target is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,000 or so as a 50-50 split, in order to get that up on the wall so that it fills the gap that currently is a giant hole that honestly I'm very concerned about. If it sits there over the winter as a giant gap, could become problematic structurally as we go through the winter. So I'd like to try and continue to advance this as quickly as I can, working within the parameters what the commission identified last night, as well as the research that the Moose and staff has been doing today in order to try and identify those, as well as a contractor that's able to install it. So
Would
that
that
would be
go
my
back to
request.
H&A?
What?
Once you've pick something that'll go back to H&A,
So what
they'll
what
approve
we
it?
discussed last night, and I do need to talk about it with Sunny, is whether or not, if I could send the product out to the H&A Commission via email, whether or not we could do some sort of vote, or whether we could have a special meeting in order to gather everybody back. Everybody was totally willing to work at whatever speed we needed them to. They just wanted to make sure that we were a little bit more consistent with the original architecture of the building.
All right, so I have a couple of questions and probably a comment afterwards. So, the H&A, what was the reasons why the H&A denied brick?
Because it wasn't consistent with the original architecture of the building.
Okay. However, had the original architecture been brick, and they wanted to go ahead and bring marble or granite, whatever was on there, we'd probably still having the same conversation, because my comment with buildings in the downtown, there are different eras. We have the 1890 era, which I think is the appropriateness, it's not as if y'all haven't heard this before, the appropriateness of the Heritage and Architecture Commission is for the 1896 era buildings. I think they overstepped their authority in any building built not in that era. Thus, this building, the Moose Building, which is circa 1951, I personally believe, and you've heard this before, falls outside the intent of the heritage and architecture to preserve the 1890s era of the premier facades of our downtown, okay? So I've always struggled with this. Well, you know, I don't like this because I don't like the color of this, I don't like this, I don't like the material. And this is a situation where I think that if it's brick and it's black or any other color on a 1950s era, which in my opinion does not fall within the purview, even though it's in the downtown area, it's not a historical building of the area that we are trying to preserve.
Where do you get that, that H&A is only supposed to be talking about 1896 buildings? I've never heard that before.
That was the original intent.
The intent, but is that the way it's
30
worded?
some
That
years
like,
ago.
if it's a 1930s building, they have no say? I've never heard that ever before. I don't know what you're talking about. Other than that, what you think.
Whether it's marble or it's brick, I think it's just ridiculous.
I'm agreeing with you, but I'm also pushing back a little bit. I don't think that H&A is pigeonholed to only talk about buildings from the 1896. And I think I've found them to be aware of, like, okay, this is a building that was built in the 1950s. I haven't found them to be like, that, you got to convert that to 1896.
But we don't have to convert it back to marble, for the 1951 marble. You can go ahead and put a really nice looking brick on it, and we have a building that doesn't have a hole.
Yeah, but you're saying it in the sense that, yeah, they have no authority here because it's not an 1896 building, and that's not true.
Well,
They do have authority.
It's just, I just think there's a difference between we're restoring it to a specific time period, which the original intent was when it was formed, was for the 1890 era buildings, okay? And
I've never seen that as some sort of charter or anything.
well, that was the original intent. That was the John Lamb and Tom Alves and all those guys, Reno Knievel, that was the intent, okay? And the original intent was for these buildings to go ahead and qualify for federal grant money to restore these buildings. It's not because I don't like that, You know, it's a dark brick versus a marble, so therefore, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna deny it because we want it to go back to marble. I don't think that's the intent.
I would be more along the lines of, was marble the way it was built? Because to me, it looks like something that they stuck on like in the 70s. Like, because I see that a lot with some of the buildings downtown where they put these weird tiles on the front of them. The Allstate building where that is, that's a good example. So it's not like, like, so I always thought it was like an after-built thing, the marble. That was the way it was built.
So it was the original way it was built, and they were 3x3 panels, and if you, I think there were some existing photo images in your packet. Those 3x3 panels align with the 3x3 windows that are both above and below that, and so it was an original part of the architecture. From a H&A standpoint, it does fall within the National Historic District, so it's certainly within the purview of H&A to review it, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards as well as our preservation plan are the two documents that we follow in order to make evaluations of that. And that commentary is always in our staff report, as it was in your staff report that you saw in your packet, where we identify for a building is always representative of the era in which it was built. And this Moose building was built in the 1950s.
Correct.
Which contained those architectural details and materiality that were consistent with what the building originally had. So, you know, we could say it's a nice brick, but to me, being a nice brick is more subjective than saying from the Secretary of the Interior Standards, you want to look at that building in the time under which it was built and the material under which it was built and the design components under which it was designed.
Well, my comment would be, brick would have been a standard material of the 1950s era.
But it wasn't a part of this design for this building.
Wasn't part of this building, but it
You
could
could
have.
say asbestos shingles were too, and if they wanted to put asbestos shingles all over the face, we would say no.
It's not going to change the character of this building, or any other building.
Not saying that it's not.
To go ahead and approve the facade grant for the brick as presented by the owner of this building. And we're not going to be changing the character of the building, of the era. We're using material of that era, which is brick.
I think
Where'd
we
the marble
are
go?
actually circumventing what the H&A has determined. They were formed by city code to look at the structure. I was reviewing the code regarding H&A, and nothing says that they are limited by a certain era. It just reflects the time in which, let me grab my glasses here. It reflects the sense of time and place that is unique to Lockport and that building. So the only thing that's before the city council is whether or not to grant that facade grant improvement. We're not here to question what the H&A has done. Anyone could appear before the H&A if there's a special meeting regarding whether the new material or the proposed material will be approved. The member of the city council could, appear before the H&A.
All I'm saying
Yeah.
is they would meet the spirit of whatever we're trying to do down there by using brick at X number of dollars versus marble at Y number of dollars. Now we gotta have to hang this marble on a south-facing wall, and the sun beating down on it. And in 70 years or so, it's very possible that another panel could fall off. But it's highly unlikely that a brick this big is gonna fall off. And we will be meeting the spirit and the intent of our ordinance by allowing them to put brick on this, and because it's of that era, not of that building, but of that era, so we meet the spirit of the Secretary of Interior or anybody else.
That's fine. I'd disagree with it. I would say that, like, you could say glass block was from that era too, and if they wanted to come and get rid of all their windows and put glass block in, it'd be like, that's a big transformation.
But
And
that's
just
not-
to
but
say that, well, that was a material that they
But
used,
that's not what they requested. They requested brick.
There's a reason why there's H&A.
then they could have requested glass block if they
They
wanted to do
did,
it.
they requested brick.
The
Right,
other,
but your reasoning is that it was a material from the 1950s. And if that's your only reasoning,
Well,
then
then
it's a
my
stinking
reasoning meets the intent of the ordinance.
if in fact the dollar amount that's proposed here was for this other material that's not, Egyptian marble, is the ordinance written where whatever the number comes up, it's 50%, or whatever the number comes up, it's what we deem we want to give them for it?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, we usually typically ask for 50%, but the council has the authority to, we've done other grants at 75% of the cost. If you want to cover the cost of the additional materials to meet the H&A request, you could do that. I think Lance's original application was around $4 or $8 grand or something, and we're asking to go up to as much as 15 to give Lance the discretion to close out this submittal so that we don't have to come back and lose another month of good weather that somebody can repair masonry in.
So the caveat to that is if they want to get funding, half of it provided by us, they have to follow that path versus, you know what, for $4,000, I can throw a brick up there and it's fine.
It would actually be
It would still be
violation of the city
violation.
code. No.
Yeah.
H&A will stop them,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
H&A
It's not like you can do whatever you want.
Okay, but to Darren's point is, I assume you have a little bit of indigestion because the price went up.
No, I have it in the
You just
adjustment.
didn't like H&A.
Yes.
I'm
it's
getting
true.
that
I
too,
don't
but-
like- But we had recently, we had an H&A where they wanted to have two rows of wraparound brick on the new building downtown. When the wraparound didn't meet, the building didn't exist. It just exists the last couple of years, but it's of that era. So my objection was, well, whether brick wrapped around or didn't, it still met the intent, okay? And so it became
It
an
is.
opinion versus the intent.
There's not,
So that's where,
I
I would much rather, they asked for brick, I have no problem with brick, and for the record, I am not a member of the Lockport Moose, okay? And so,
Well, at this
That's
point,
just me.
we're talking about this. What H&A does is down the road anyway, so we need to,
You could override this if you wanted to. So, and that's our purview. We don't answer to H&A. We try to work with them and respect what they do. If otherwise, why have them? Which I think Darren would be happy to get rid of them. But I think that, no, I'm just
I don't want to get rid of them.
But I think, but there's times when I've had to push back on H&A when I've heard them like, I just don't like it. It's like, I'm sorry,
Just don't
Will,
think-
that's not the right answer. You need to have, and we've even started, we made sure we got some training to make sure we understood that it's not an opinion club.
Right.
I don't believe this is an opinion club decision. I think it's like, put the marble on the way it was, and that's what we expect to see. That's the way the building was designed, that's the way it was built. You could put a whole bunch of weird things that were on there in the 1950s. So just the material itself, because it's from the era, doesn't trump it. I think it makes sense to me that they would do it. My only concern was that they were going to come back and this is going to cost $100,000. You're saying that, like, look, we would only match up to 15. That's what you're thinking is like at the top end of what you might see. Sounds like we still have money in the fund for these things. It's not, so I don't even think, Darren, you're arguing with the money thing. So,
Money's irrelevant.
right, well, it's not
But Lance is
irrelevant,
also
but,
saying it's not definitely marble. You're giving them options of material that they will accept, that's
Yes.
going back up.
Yes.
So-
So, actually.
which is one of the things that I think I appreciate about H&A. It's just they don't make you put recovered wood from the HMS Bounty, right? It's like it could be something that looks similar or reflects it. So I think we try to be flexible and still keep the look of certain buildings and
I think it brings up an important point, is that when you have a building in this area and you're taking marble slabs off of it, you shouldn't put them in the dumpster. that material, and I'm not an architect, and I'm not a structural engineer, so I don't know whether it's feasible to put it back up, but having that option would have saved you an incredible amount of money in this particular case.
I don't know what the particulars were when it came to
Yeah,
the
and
demo.
I don't either, and Jared, I asked him aside, and he said that they disposed of
It was awful. It was like very unsafe. Once they found out the way it was installed on the building, it was just a matter of time before all the chunks were gonna start dropping off of there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
that's
why,
not the-
it wasn't like they could take the one that broke and put a new one back in the
Right,
spot.
right.
The whole
I'm
thing was
saying
coming down.
all of them come
Now-
down.
Now, if they would've come up with a better way to install that, I'm not sure if they could have come up with a nicer way to reinstall it. I don't have those definites. Maybe Lance has that, but.
The installation was absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
It basically, when they took them off, it was basically like somebody caulked liquid nails up
Right.
there and they
Yeah,
slabbed.
and that's, I'm not saying
and
put
they
it back
put
up
a-
the way it was. I'm not saying that it's got to be, like, I'm saying today's construction standards
correct.
can put a marble slab vertically onto a wall.
Correct.
Safely.
And we have.
Before we throw this stuff away in this district, especially marble.
Yeah, the
Applause needs
product
to
that
happen.
we're looking at is a contemporary product that's got a much thinner profile. These panels were 2.5 inches thick, they were 180 pounds apiece. And when you throw liquid nails basically up there to try and hold it up, it's only a matter of time, as Darren noted, that it would fall. There will be a lot of work involved in trying to get the right masonry ties and the right installation method. There will probably be some backfilling of a lot of the cavity that you see currently up there. But the products that we're looking at, and like I said, H&A is totally responsive. That's why we've allowed some forms of EFS, some of the faux wood products that went up on Crema Coffee, and the stucco that went up on Cornello, and the cornice. The pieces that go over the Opera House windows are not stone. That is not a stone material, but it looks like a stone material, and the H&A was okay with that. It saved the owner money, so he didn't have to do that, and the look and the appearance was very consistent with the 1890s look. So this isn't something where I believe that H&A is saying, well, you got to spend $180,000, and I don't really care what you do, you got to do what I say. It's more of, how can we find a way to maintain the architectural integrity of the building as it was originally designed, but find materials that can both be installed better than what it originally was, but also be a material that could last longer.
Okay, so you were looking for this to go on consent so that you could...
I want it to go on action.
And an
so
action.
that I have the opportunity, so that if we can get bids in, I can present you with a resolution that has an actual number in it, that has something that you can fully understand and approve.
Well, that's fine. That's what, I was going to recommend action. I didn't know if you needed consent because of timing, but that's fine. So we'll put it on for action, and we'll go from there.
Are you okay with a little bit larger amount on the grant then?
So we'll put it on for action of up to 15,000, right? And then,
That's my guess right now.
Okay.
If it's on for action, you'll see what the number is.
right. So,
assuming
but
we-
I guess we can expect that it's not going to be this number where you're
Correct.
telling us you're not going to go above 15. That's just,
Right.
So that's what we can expect when we see it on action next time. All right.
That's my hope. We do not have any bids yet. We're
Lance.
working on that.
Once you find a building product that lasts longer than marble, please let me know. I'm very
Well, it would
interested.
still be marble, but the backing and the ability to have it be thin,
Right,
a
right.
thinner profile is what's important.
Awesome.
Yeah, marble goes bad, you know it.
I was down there the night it fell.
Yeah.
Yeah, not at the Moose, I was at Cool Creations, but it
You're
was
like,
loud. You heard it? Yeah. My daughter ran around the corner. She's
All right. Well, thanks for the discussion, everyone. All right, so PW1's next. What do you got, Brent?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Quick item this evening on the agenda. This is for our 2024 sanitary sewer and water main replacement and roadway recon project. So what this is this will be actually what we design in '24 for construction in '25 in order to get ahead of just the delays in nearly everything when it comes to construction, materials, utility relocates, everything that is going on in our world today. We're asking to get moving a little bit quicker, get out there ahead of the winter and get all of our surveying done. This project does include a number of blocks. It's about 9 blocks of a full recon with water main replacement. There are 2 blocks on State Street where currently there is a parallel main on the east and west sides of the road. We're looking to eliminate the west side, which is a 4-inch main, and just upsize the east side of the water main, east side of State Street, so there will be no road work associated with that. Again, this project would be similar to other projects in the area, full recon, so we have curb and gutter, storm sewer. We end up with sod and trees when we're all completed, brand new water main, and a fully improved area. So again, this would be 2024 design for a 2025 construction year. Asking for council's consideration for consent this evening to approve resolution number 23-092 to accept a proposal from Chamlin and Associates in the amount of $393,000 to design the 2024 sanitary sewer and water main replacement and roadway recon project.
So let me ask you a question, Brent.
Yep.
So some of the things we talked about at our special meeting the other day, this would be designs for one of those projects.
That's correct.
Okay, and so,
Just the design, and I know that one of the options is, when do these kind of slide in?
Yes.
And one of the things that this does is this allows us to get a project ready. No guarantees on, essentially, necessarily what year it would be built or constructed. So, the problem that we're facing is everything takes longer. And so we're trying to just try to manage a little bit better and get projects started a little sooner. But this is tying us to no construction, tying us to nothing more than, at this
This
point,
also helps us
getting
get
an
a better
IEPA
budget
permit.
number, right? I mean, if we do the design, we have a better idea of where the cost estimates are going to come in.
Absolutely, yeah, it does. And the more work we can do now, again, the better we can plan later.
okay, I guess my one question where I was going with it is, and I don't think this is a problem, but I'll just ask it, that, when you design something, let's say, we later as a council decide to shuffle some projects around or postpone something, it's not like these go bad, right?
Correct.
So these hold up for, this is the design, if we do it now or you do it in 2027, it's,
Correct. I would say that you've got several years. So if you're going to say, well, let's say about 2040, I'd say, okay, maybe something may change over that period of time. But when we're talking about up to 2030, I would feel confident in stating that this design would stay active through that CIP period that we're looking at.
all right. Any other thoughts, questions on it? We okay with a consent on it? Sure. All right, consent, please, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if nothing else, we can do a motion to adjourn. All right, Joanne, seconded by Renee, all in favor?
Aye.